talking about symmetry testing.
Yeah, we are. We've been having a really good week this week. We've been talking about structural balance. The theme of this week, everyone, is that around the world, lockdowns are, in some places, they're easing. You know, in Australia, at least, we've been able to go back to the gym last week. Last week on on Saturday, actually, Saturday the 13th of June, gyms were able to reopen. So we've been getting a lot of questions from people asking us, now I'm going back to the gym, what kind of training program should I be doing? There's a lot of you that have been following us for quite a while, and you've been doing some of our stretching programs or the at-home workouts or whatever it is, and the questions are coming through, what should I be doing at home? And what we want to talk about today is the concept of, well, this whole week, it's really about driving the message home that if you've been away from the gym for a while, or if you've never really been to a gym, you need to build a strong foundation again. The foundation that you built has most likely been weakened a little bit, and we need to, address that before you start going straight back to the things that you want to work on. And so today, the theme of today is symmetry, left to right. How important does training the left and right side of your body and trying to get, individually and trying to get balance, how important is that? And is it as important as people think it is?
Well, if you're a bodybuilder, it's extremely important. Of course. They always want symmetry.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one where, coming into, when I first started studying physio, I thought, everything was all about just fine-tuning this kind of perfect body and really finding these really specific things that we could fix to just make this, ideal, perfect, sort of balanced, symmetrical person, and that's the only way that you're going to perform your best and be out of pain. But it was so interesting as my journey through my sports science degree and my physiotherapy degree, where it was really it's kind of exact symmetry is not as important as you think. And when you look at a lot of high performing athletes in asymmetrical sports, like you see Rafael Nadal's right arm is like this big monster thing, but that serves his goals, and it's a part of the development from that sport. So
no pun intended, it serves his goal.
Yeah. Good from you.
That's right. Saying that, I've worked with a professional tennis player who was coming off the back end of his career. Yeah. And he, this was way back when I was a trainer at Fitness First, and he had been an elite level tennis player for many, many years, and had now become a chair umpire, and was no longer playing competitively. He played weekend, whatever, but not competitively on the circuit. He was ranked, and he had major issues in his neck and in his shoulders, and it was phenomenal how much more overdeveloped the scapular control muscles on one side were.
And so, to finish my point, I'm saying that, you can perform at an extremely high level being asymmetrical. These people aren't
hello, Troy, just in case you're watching.
I'm saying not going to, with someone like that, it's not going to be okay, can't play this tournament because you'll injure yourself because you're asymmetrical. Yeah. But in their strength and conditioning programs, they are working bloody hard to try and even up, being really smart about, they know what their sport demands, and so they're going to, spend plenty of time working on the overall muscular development to try and bring back that symmetry. But just saying that, just because they have, changes side to side doesn't limit them, doesn't mean that they, for one, are in pain, and secondly, are not going to perform well.
Tennis is one, and I won't go down too deep into the reads on this, but tennis is a real obvious example because of the serve and the fact that they never serve with the other side. It's only ever their dominant side that they're serving with, because they become so good at it, and it would just be silly to serve with the other arm. You spent some time with AFL. I imagine that AFL players would kick with one leg all the time, wouldn't they?
Well, in professionals, they kick both. It's actually ridiculous. Really. A lot of them kick off their non-preferred leg. It's really very impressive. So.
Yeah, I was just wondering
because I've thought about this a lot. I've thought about this a lot because they have to. It depends if you're running, broadside to the goal or this side. You can't if the goal's over there and you can't kick with your right leg and get a shot. So it's pretty amazing. Those guys, what they can do. Same with soccer players, right?
Yeah.
Like a soccer player, if you're running to the left and the goal's on your right, you're not going to be able to kick a goal with your right leg. It's going to have to be with the left foot to get the...
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my personal example is I played ultimate frisbee for 11 years competitively, and so I spent a lot of time where we use our left foot as our pivot foot, plant that, and then, I was pretty much always throwing my right arm. And I definitely noticed over the years, was very much, my hip and my knee from constantly pivoting on that side felt quite different to my right leg. And it's been, a lot of work to, I guess really focus on bringing that sort of single leg training, that unilateral training, to try and, bring a bit of that balance back. But at the same time, I'm not like worried that I've, my body doesn't work just because it's going to be.
Of course. Let's bring this back a little bit though. So for those of you that are tuning in that have never heard of what we're talking about, of symmetry training. So structural balance in the UMS, the way that we refer to structural balance is, it means a balance between strength and flexibility. It means a balance between agonist and antagonist, so opposing muscle groups in the same joint.
And a balance between global muscles and the deeper stabilizers.
That's right,
in that system.
And a balance between left and right side, balance between upper and lower body strength. It means a really balanced body, yeah? So, but what we're really talking about today is the balance between the left and the right side. And a lot of people, it's really funny, you get people on both ends of the spectrum. You get people that come in that really pay this stuff off. Like, we've got people that came in that we told them, look, you need to do some structural balance, and they don't stay around in the gym. They're like, well, I don't want to do that. I just want to deadlift and I want to squat. And you look at the way that they're, like, as soon as they get any kind of weight, they just go straight over to the one side and favor that one side. And you say, listen, 9 to 18 weeks, you're going to fix this forever.
Can I just say something? Because this is a really important statement, and I think people should really understand this. We're all, at least all of us sitting around the table right now, and the vast majority of the clientele that we deal with, or the people that in our groups. Now, there are a few. We do train a few athletes. But the majority of people watching are blessed because they don't have to train like an athlete.
Yeah.
And that's a blessing.
Yeah.
People have there's this notion that you should train like an athlete. That's total bullshit.
Yeah.
Athletes have to make major sacrifices to their overall function, so that, because they have to favour these certain skills,
Well, we've seen it recently with some of the professional football and AFL players that we've had here in the gym, and they talk to us about their goals, and you show them this roadmap for what they would have to do to get their body optimally, and then they say, that's awesome, but my season starts in 9 weeks.
Yeah.
And then you go, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just want
to, before we go any further, I just want to make it absolutely clear. If you're not a professional athlete and you don't have a specific skill that you need to develop as part of a team or as part of a specific sport, then you're blessed. You can train the way you freaking want to, and then you can really train for just overall performance, to set this amazing foundation. So when the time comes that you choose to do a sport, you're in great stead, and I think that that's something that is really important to make clear. And then also secondary, everyone coming out of lockdown right now and joining up to the gym, it creates a really great opportunity for you to hit the restart button, to start again afresh, to lay a strong foundation, something that you may have never done before. You may have never done. If you were like me and you started exercising the way I did, you followed a mate who knew absolutely nothing to the gym, and you just copied what he did. And then you mimic other people in the gym that look bigger than you, or that look like they know more than you, who also know absolutely nothing. And then you generally carry on like that for a decade. And then finally, if you're like me, you become influenced by someone who has a look at your body because you've torn something up or you've damaged something, and said, wow, you've got some serious issues you need to overcome, and then you start looking at for a better way to train. That's how most people get into gym training. It's like the blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
So if you've just come out of lockdown, that's one of the key take-homes. This is a great Kickstarter. This is and you should. And I even saw a really good post by our friend Sebastian Orab over at Australian Strength Coach, who's a powerlifting coach, who put out a free program for people who are coming out of lockdown to get back into the gym. And he made a point of saying, this is not a comp prep program. This program is not going to help you win a gold medal. It is a program to reintroduce you to the gym, to get your body moving. It's not going to leave you incapacitated with DOMs the next day. That's not the idea of it. It's just designed to get all the muscles moving again properly and to get you reintroduced to the gym. And our foundations program is very much like that. We probably go a little bit deeper into balance than Bass does, but I think everyone should be thinking like that, because you can't come straight back. And I think this is something that you guys should definitely highlight in this discussion why, after having 3 months out of the gym, you cannot come back and try to kick off where you left off.
Because otherwise you'll be sending me messages and we'll be doing every Physio Friday about tendinopathy for the foreseeable future.
Right.
Because
But we did talk about that yesterday.
Yeah, okay.
Today we're talking much more about symmetry and the specifics of it and why it's important and why how much is too much. Because what Phil and I were talking about this show is that symmetry testing, symmetry training, what we're talking about is a great example would be doing upper body strength training with dumbbells instead of barbells. That's just the most basic way that you could say it, because when you move dumbbells, if you do a chest press with dumbbells, then each arm has to move the weight individually, whereas if you do a barbell chest press, then both the arms move the same weight. Which means, as Yanni spoke about on Monday, if you have a weaker side, if you have a dominant side, then when you go close to failure, the dominant side is always going to do that little bit more. So...
And that little bit more, that's where the
magic
dreams
happens.
are made.
Yeah, that's right.
So
unchecked over time, that can become a really big issue. So the way that we tackle that is that we like to get people training with dumbbells first to have a look at the way that their body moves, and so that people can get an understanding of whether or not they have an imbalance. And then we move on to barbells, because that's where the real magic happens. But then we still use dumbbells maybe as supplementary work. Yeah. And what Phil and I were talking about is, it's funny because, as I said before, in my experience, there's like two kinds of people. There's the people that just totally pay off symmetry training, and that all they want to do is the big stuff because they just want to train like the elite people. And then you get the people that go way too far down the rabbit hole, where they think that they have these major issues in their body that require 18 months of symmetry training, and then at 18 months I still want to get another check-in, and maybe I'll do another 6 months before I...
and it's just... they become scared of, bilateral movement because they think they won't be able to control it or something, or, it's going to be really damaging if they're, doesn't...
Yeah, and I mean, I was even a victim of this. It was you that pulled me out of that rabbit hole probably 8 months ago now or so, when I was going through my rehab with my shoulder, and I'd already been doing rehab for about 6 months, and I was talking about my next phase of rehab with dumbbells, and you went, and I was like, man, I can only shoulder press like 5 kilos in each hand, but there's nothing for me. I think I'm going to do this and do that. And you said, man, I think it's time that you try some barbells. And I started so light. I started on a chest press of about 30 kilos. And I'm now up to, on Monday, I did 95 kilos. So I've had a massive, I've tripled my strength with my chest press. Yep. For 5 reps, that's right. And I was doing, I was even getting back to doing behind the head shoulder press, there was the point came when there was enough symmetry training and I had to just get a barbell and go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, that's also an important thing to highlight for those people who are stuck in that injury identity of, I can't progress to doing bigger and better stuff, But we keep it on topic and talk about that the importance of where people should be going back to the gym and what they should be focusing on. And I just love the idea that, this whole lockdown has hit the reset button. It's a societal reset button, really, and so let's use it. Let's use it as a don't be one of the statistics of people who rush back to the gym and try to regain the last 3 months of lost momentum in the first phase of their program, or the first weeks, And I know how hard it is because that's how my mind works. It's hard to go back and regress and do all that. But, God, if you've never done it before, if you've never really looked into how your body's functioning from a balance perspective, from a symmetry perspective, it's quite humbling. And it's a great exercise to do every once in a while.
Yeah, and I think some practical sort of takeaways when you are looking at, working with dumbbells, for example, that, you use you only go up to your weakest side. So, my left shoulder from an old injury similar to Rad's is, always consistently just going to be that little bit lower. So it's really tempting to just blast out, a whole bunch of extra reps on the right side. But I know that's not going to serve me long term because if I'm, so always I definitely recommend starting with the the side that is a bit weaker, seeing you're testing that level and then, only using that sort of rep range for the...
Always dictate the rep range, the load, the volume with the weaker side. And that's what we teach.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because I'm I actually have to remember back to 15 or 16 years ago being a juvenile trainer when somebody told me this for the first time, and it was almost like a light globe moment, you know, when whoever it was, maybe it was Tony Battaji, when he said, yeah, of course, you choose your weight with the weak side and you do those reps and then you do the same on the strong side. And I was like, oh, wow. And people that don't know that yet, when we tell it to them, they kind of have this light globe moment. But it makes sense, right? Because if you can lift 10 pounds on whatever in your strong side for 10 reps, and that's the most that you can do, and then you grab the same weight with your weak side and you can barely do 6 or 7 good reps, well, guess what? That gap just grew.
Yeah.
And you'll feel like the weak side gets its ass kicked and the strong side barely even gets started.
And more importantly, I mean, like if you're trying to do, you know, that weight on the weaker side, you know, if it's significantly different, then it's going to be hard to, you know, keep the right form throughout the, you know, even those reps. And so it's just not,
It's
not
just
ideal.
piss poor load management. That's what we talk about. You'll be really struggling to manage the load on the weak side. To keep it really relevant and practical, I am a firm believer that 3 program phases is enough to iron out a symmetry imbalance. And if you're not symmetrical after 3 program phases, which can be anywhere from 9 to 16 weeks,
9 to
18 weeks. It depends how savvy you are, how experienced you are at lifting. Charles Poliquin used to program 3-week program phases, so 9 weeks would be 3 program blocks to an athlete.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. He mostly worked with.
But
pretty high
then
performers.
for an untrained person, the programs, the phases will be anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And so for an absolute beginner, a 6-week program phase, we call it a it's referred to as a mesocycle, is something that I'd probably be recommending. And so then, after 18 weeks, if there's still an imbalance, you know, we use a formula to assess how the severity of the imbalance. But you got to remember, there is no such thing as a perfectly symmetrical body. You're always going to have something going on there, you know. And so if you're like, and this is where, you know, Rad's story is relevant before. There is a point where you have to kind of move on and go, okay, I'm going to start.
Like as I often talk about with, you know, different parts of your body, it's all about training these systems. So Rad spent so much time really working on that, you know, that his one injured side, so the right side shoulder system, and it got to the point where, you know, like he'd done so much work in that, but he hadn't trained it in how to, you know, work as a full upper body push-pull sort of movement where, you really do get just such good benefit from those big lifts if you do them well. And
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it all goes back to this concept of where this whole thing's coming from. It's this idea of laying the foundation.
Yeah,
you know, and a good foundation has not a major difference between left to right side. Like what we call an acceptable difference with our strength testing when we do the strength testing in the UMS, an acceptable difference on a 6RM is a 2 rep range difference. You know, if you got 2 reps. More on the right, on the dominant side than you did on the more 2 reps or less difference. We don't call that a difference that you need to be saying, oh shit, I need to really focus on this.
Yeah. And a fun practical physio tip for anyone who has, you know, had if you have an injury on one side, say you break your arm, you know, you break your left arm, and you don't want it to, you know, it's going to get weaker if you spend that much time in a cast, and the muscle is going to atrophy and everything. But if you do train the other arm, so your right arm, you're actually going to help maintain your strength long term by training the opposite side, because the way that the neural drive, which we've talked about before with, you know, one of the 2 components, muscle size and neural drive for strength production, if you are training the other side, then you will get bilateral neural drive input, and that actually slows down atrophy and keeps your strength. So it's a really interesting one.
That fascinates
Dude,
me, man.
So,
when I read that, I think I learned it in the brain that changes itself. That just fascinated me.
Yeah, we did an experiment at uni in my sports science degree where we had to test both arms, train our non-dominant arms for 6 weeks, just bicep curls on that other arm, and then you looked at the strength changes over time, and it was amazing. Like you got stronger on the other side just from that increased neural drive.
Yeah, look, when I dislocated my knee playing soccer, I couldn't do much on that right leg for a while, and I did heaps of stuff on my left leg, and it carries over. There's a very strong carryover, you know. So,
and if you want to go hardcore and really into the weeds of like neural reconditioning and in that sort of setting where you do have a severe injury which you can't train on it, you can also do imaginary training, and that's been proven to increase strength. So
very quickly, because we've got 5 minutes left to bring it in for a landing. Yeah, that's right. If there's we got a couple of people on the live stream to the UMS Movement Mastermind. Any of you guys listening to the podcast or the replay on YouTube, if you haven't already, get yourself over to the UMS Movement Mastermind. It's a private Facebook group where we connect. We do these podcast recordings streamed live to that group, and they can interact and ask questions. If we have no questions on this, let's just reinforce the 4 key take-homes that people can implement immediately. So Phil, your point on the selection of load and volume, why don't you reiterate that in under 60 seconds?
Oh yes, okay. If you're training unilaterally, then use your weaker side as the benchmark for the weights you're doing.
Yep, perfect. So you heard it first from Phil. And Rad's key point was...
Well, I think the importance of structural balance, so the importance of symmetry training, but not going too far down that rabbit hole and not getting caught up with it. Like we get people that do the foundations program, the UMS foundations program, and they get to the end of it and say, I did really well, but I think I'm going to do it again. And you're just like, no, that's not the idea.
Yeah.
That program set you up for going forward. And yes, there's so much in there that of course you're going to get better at it. Guess what? You'll go back in 10 years, do that program again, and you'll still be getting better at it.
Yeah.
But you don't finish a structural balance program and say, I didn't get the results I want, I'm going to do it again. You don't do it.
You're not going for perfection. You're going for performance. You're going for better. You're going for progress. There is no such thing as perfect symmetry.
Yep.
So that's Rad's key take home.
Yeah.
And my key take home is very much aligned with that. You should not need, you should not work on symmetry for more than 3 program phases. There's just no need for it. If you get to the end of the 3rd program phase and you're not perfectly symmetrical, it is okay. The benchmark that we use in our anatomical structural balance blueprint that the guys in the UMS online coaching program have access to, and our guys at the gym here, we do it every program mesocycle, is within 2 reps. So as a 6RM strength test, if you're within 2 reps, left to right side, that's okay. That's you don't need to program that in, okay? Yeah. If you are out of that 2 rep benchmark, then that's something that we would prioritize in the next program phase for you.
And that's even the way that the whole UMS program is designed. Like you go through the foundations program, which really sets you up. But then when you're doing the progressions program and you do your strength testing, if there's still a couple of issues, it just gets programmed in.
Yeah.
It's not that you redo the whole foundations program again, because there's plenty of things that you're going to be able to progress on,
And I think it's just so key to realize that just because you're training bilaterally doesn't mean you can't be working on symmetry. Like, it's what the structural balance, the foundations program is so good for is it starts to make you aware of these things that maybe you weren't aware of before. So then when you get into your bilateral training, into UMS progressions, then you can be aware of this stuff. So you can feel like, when I'm going down into my squat, when you look in the mirror or if you record yourself, that's why it's so useful to, upload the videos onto the Facebook groups here, is that you can start to see I really do sort of lean to that right side. And then that's a really good technique cue to help you come back to the middle. And then as you shift that weight, aim for that, symmetry within your bilateral lifts, then that's going to help the strength discrepancies. So just because you're not doing unilateral stuff does not mean that you're ignoring symmetry. So
yeah, and from a macro, the big picture, we've all had the reset button pushed on us, except for Blakely Hernage, who's joined us here, who's one of our administrators because he's got such an awesome at-home gym. But not everyone has a gym like Blakely, so a lot of us haven't had access to our external load like barbells, dumbbells, and kettlebells like we're used to, which is great because it's given us a reset. It's given us an opportunity to go back and lay a foundation that we may never have had before in the past. And I promise you guys, if you do this properly, if you give it 3 program phases, it will change your life. It will be a massive, massive humbling experience, but forever going forward, your performance will be improved. You will have laid a really great foundation to build on, and that's, just like building a superstructure, building a superhuman requires a very strong foundation.
Yeah, for sure. Now, listen, if you've made it this far through the show and you like this content, then consider subscribing to us. You can subscribe to the podcast and go and check out our YouTube channel. We put really good workout videos up there and instructional videos that obviously we can't just talk about. We have to demonstrate. Just search Unity Gym on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell. And also join the UMS Movement Mastermind Facebook group. Just search Facebook for UMS Movement Mastermind. We actually record these podcasts live there, so you can ask questions in real time and we answer them. You can also get free coaching from us by posting videos and asking for help. And if you haven't done so already, download one of those blueprints, the Flexibility Blueprint, Strength Blueprint, or Nutrition Blueprint. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Even better than subscribing just to the podcast, try sharing it with your friends as well. If there's people who need some health advice, then send them our way.
Yeah. And I would like to, if you're watching the replay on YouTube, guys, question of the day, why do you want to get stronger and more flexible? Why do you want to develop strength and flexibility? We'd really like to know. Hit us up in the comments on YouTube, on the podcast, and we'll start a discussion around that. We'd love to know. Speak to you soon.
Yep.
See you tomorrow.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that
It's
far.
the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image. We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.